Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fire and Forte. And welcome to Jenine Beekhuyzen.
Hi, Hannah. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am absolutely thrilled. This is my first, but I'm hoping not my last, doctor who has been awarded an Order of Australian medal. So I'm really honoured to have you join us and to share your amazing work. So thank you. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Hannah. So excited to be here. And funnily enough, the whole OAM thing happened in COVID, and I almost missed out because I didn't check my mailbox, and a whole bunch of fun things happen as we do these adventures. But yeah, delighted to be here and super excited to share with you about what we're doing with diversity.
And I'm going to say up front that you are just such a great example of what I regard as fire and forte. So, what that is to me is a real convergence of passion, education, and skill set, and then bringing that together into purpose. And, when I read about your work, I thought, what an amazing example of that. Someone that has been educated and had a successful career in IT, computing, technology, and then has this passion for bringing more women into that space, and then has the courage to go after it and find new ways. I mean, this is your own Order of Australia from Fire and Water. It's really great to be kicking off 2023 talking to someone like you.
Thanks, Hannah. That's really kind. And I have a saying, it takes a village, right? Like, I mean, I can't be doing this without you, without all of the people that we work with, without so many champions out there. We all need to work together because we all want the same outcomes. And the world is a better place to have more women's representation in, decision making, in building technology, in what our world looks like in the future. In the UN tells us women and girls are being left behind in terms of digital technologies. So we absolutely need to intervene to showcase technology to young people, give them access and give them skills and confidence so that they can help build our digital worlds for the future.
I was reading your website earlier and read that the description on there says Janine is mobilizing a tribe of next generation leaders who are committed to solving real world problems with technology. So, yeah, can you talk to us about what your mission actually is overall?
Absolutely. So it's around enabling women and girls to lead us in technology and lead us in STEM more broadly, so science, tech, engineering, and maths. And we've been talking about a skills shortage for the last 20 plus years. We need more women in technical roles, in our technical companies, in decision making roles. And the dial hasn't really shifted. And it's very frustrating for someone who comes from a technology background who knows how capable women are. And I mean, I was just researching imposter syndrome this morning, funnily enough, and the history of imposter syndrome and how it affects mostly high achieving women who then question themselves and think that they're not good enough for certain opportunities that come their way. And it's something that many of us experience. And to be honest, it's untrue because as far as I know, no one's ever been found out to be an imposter. But it's these barriers we put upon ourselves to almost keep ourselves back and keep us in a place where we don't get to explore what potential we can bring to the world. So in my experience, particularly with young people and girls particularly, young people care about the world. They want to make a difference. They realize how much we've kind of mucked it up as adults and they want to fix that. And they really genuinely care and want to make a difference. And the biases they have are not the same as what we have. And the barriers are not the same. So they want to come into this and really do everything they can to make the world better.
Interesting. I mean, imposter syndrome is something that I've toyed with a little bit, a lot, and I've now decided it's no longer part of my vocabulary. And I think that that's one thing as you get older that if you feel it, then throw that to one side because life is short. I mean, that's a personal interpretation of that. But I wondered from your point of view if there's any kind of misperception around technology and and why women aren't getting into it.
There's so many layers to your question there, Hannah, and I think part of it starts when we're very young. So the research tells us that girls opt out of STEM and technical careers as young as 6 years old. So something that happens between 5 and 6 with young people, girls believe that they're similar in terms of capability at maths when they're 5, but when they turn 6, something changes and they think they're not as good, even though nothing in their grades have changed. In my experience teaching IT, information technology at university for many years, I would have 10% women in the room. That 10% of women were top of the class in terms of grades, but they would leave at the end of the course because they didn't want to be the only woman in the room, or they didn't want to take on the roles that they were given by the majority in the team. So certainly the women, and I hear stories like this almost on a weekly basis of a female engineer, university being told that she can't use the drill in her mechanical engineering degree because she's, acts a little bit dissy and she's not capable, even though she's blitzing all the guys in terms of her grades. So there's this unconsciousness in the workplace often that sort of weeds women out, that pushes them out. And sometimes it's like it's just too hard. Is it worth fighting for every single day? And all the women in STEM and technology, particularly, they're all pretty exceptional. And because they kind of have to be, they have to have worked twice as hard to be there. And so that's very frustrating. So how do we get everyone to be included? How do we bring everyone along and find a place for them and get rid of those outdated stereotypes? So I don't know if you realize, but the first programmer in the world was a woman back in the 1800s. So we have Ada
No,
Lovelace.
interesting. I'm assuming
Yeah.
that there wasn't a Apple Mac in 1800. So what was she programming?
Not quite. So it was Ada Lovelace back in the 1840s, and she worked with Charles Babbage on his analytical engine, which was essentially the first calculator, so the first computer. And she made it so much better and is coined as the first programmer in the world. We had Hedy Lamarr in the 1920s. She was a Hollywood screen goddess, and she invented the basis for Wi-Fi that we use every single day, and what we call spread spectrum, which is embedded in all of the defense systems we use around the world every single day. She did that in her spare time as a Hollywood screen goddess. And so then we have Grace Hopper in the 1950s, who, basically invented modern computing with building the latest sort of computer languages. So you've got women in history who've done incredible things. And then in 1984, we brought PCs into our home. And what happened in 1984, there was such a great marketing campaign out of the US from Radio Shack. So, like a Dick Smith kind of technology company. And they had a campaign that said, dads, grab your sons and come and grab a PC. So dads went and bought a PC computer. They put it in the boys' room at home, and girls never got access to it anymore. And the campaign was so good that, then hacking came about. It was all the hacking and all the evilness and all the guys involved in that. And this whole culture of, if you look at all the movies from the 80s of, weird science and anything involved with technology, it was always nerdy guys, right? And women just went, not for me anymore. So there's a very clear evidence that women definitely left these industries back in the 80s, and we've never quite recovered. And so the way I see it is, we've created this problem, we can absolutely fix it.
Well, actually, when you explain that, you almost think it's quite short-termist.
Pretty much.
This
I think so.
hasn't been a permanent issue or well-proven issue. And when you were talking about Grace Hopper and all of those examples, they're really good examples of problem solving. And we've all got brains that are used to problem solving in so many different fields. Why not apply that to technology, I think?
Absolutely. And particularly young people, because again, and for us, it's about young people solving young people's problems, because I don't know what problems young people have. I don't have children. I can't help to solve them. Let's get them on board and fix it. Let's fix what's important to them and get them to lead the change.
Incredible. I'd love to actually join the tech girls movement, but we'll come on to that, because I'm wondering if tech woman movement, is basically the same thing.
Absolutely. We have a role for you. We look for mentors, and you would be perfect.
Excellent. Okay, we'll watch this space. Now, we're talking to you with a few weeks until STEMfest. Well, this whole event looks incredible. It's running in Sydney in February 2023. I wondered if you could talk through what the event is, what the purpose of it is, and what your hopes for it is as well.
Amazing. Thanks, Hannah. So yes, STEMfest, we're, I think, about 29 days away. It's really exciting to be hosting it in Sydney. And so I've been talking about the lack of women in technology specifically, and more broadly STEM, for more than 20 years. So I've been researching it for 22 years, I think, now. And so I kind of understand what the problem is and how to fix it. And we've certainly done that through the Tech Girls Movement Foundation over the last 10 years. For me, I'm kind of sick of talking about the lack of women in tech, because I feel like I've talked about it forever. And certainly the conversations 20 years ago were, why do we need more women in tech? And we're not having those conversations anymore, which is awesome. We've now moved to the conversation of how do we get more women in tech, which is great. And so the fact we've moved along a little bit, I'm now looking at, like, who else are we leaving behind? And I've been very fortunate in my team. I have been working with someone who has a severe disability for the last 4 years. And I say I'm very fortunate in that I've learnt so much from her in terms of how can she actively contribute to a workplace and be valued for her brains and not be limited by her physical capacity. So for me, she's so incredible. Amy on my team, if you ever come across Amy, she's amazing. And it's just, for me, finding about how I can be a good employer. how can I employ people who maybe can't have a different circumstance in life and not as privileged as I am? And how do we make the most, not to make the most of them, but help them contribute actively to things that they care about? So I'm so fortunate to have found Amy, and she's in Canberra, I'm in Brisbane, we work remotely. So honestly, it doesn't affect our daily life at all. And for her, I think it's a bit of a leveler because people don't realize when she's on the screen that she has a disability. So if they can't physically see the wheelchair, for instance. So I guess for me, I'm hoping to share some of those experiences through STEMfest and talk with other employers. And so many employers want to create a diverse workforce, but they don't know where to start. Like, well, do I put in a wheelchair ramp? Will that fix everything? Well, no, it won't, because there are other things. Like, how do you find people? There are a whole bunch of conversations you need to have. How do we hire trans people? How do we work with people who are neurodiverse? I think there's such a broad range of people that we're just missing out on in the technology space, particularly. We need them part of it. So the conversations beyond gender is the conversation at STEMfest. And how do we find the people we're leaving behind and have the right conversations to hopefully shift the dial? Because we've been talking about this for far too long in terms of gender, but yes, we're all together and we can all create the world better.
I read recently that the New South Wales government were actually really proactively looking at what do we need to do to change, bring more people with disabilities in, because you think, why is that so difficult? And in your view, is that a lack of understanding around how as an employer? And what do you hope, or have you got some speakers that can assist employers around that area?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. And I think part of it is firstly just sometimes workplace culture. We've always done things a certain way, so it's difficult. So I work with a teacher who has a lot of students with special needs. And I love her way of approaching this in that to get to assembly, there's a set of stairs or there's a ramp. And so, of course, the children with disabilities will take the ramp. But she takes all the children up the ramp because we all should be going that way. Because one person can't come up the stairs, none of us should be going up the stairs. And for me, that's a really nice analogy of how can we just examine how we do things on a day-to-day basis. And I think we're quite exclusionary without realizing it. It's that unconscious bias that kicks in and we don't realize. So it does really take an active effort. I mean, even talking with Amy, we go to the social event, everyone's standing, she's sitting. She doesn't really want to look at that part of everyone's body all night, but we don't actually sit down. So I guess some basic things like that to make people feel comfortable in the workplace. And on the other side of that, I mean, the research tells us that hiring someone with a disability in your workplace culture is so much more positive. Everyone feels much more, collectively engaged in the organization. So there's a lot of benefits for bringing other people on board.
Fantastic. And also, I'm imagining that we need so many different perspectives to build new technologies, and I suppose to improve technologies as well. Is your hope that we could build in a more diverse way, more people from different backgrounds into the tech space?
Absolutely. If we all look the same, we all think the same.
Okay.
So like groupthink is real, and we definitely need to have different people sitting at the table. So an example, I was chatting with someone who works with children and like a kids helpline. And so they decided to bring some kids in the room to talk to them about how they use their service. So that as I was chatting to them, they'd never actually spoken necessarily with kids face to face before, even though they were providing a service for children. They brought them in. And the first thing that occurred to them was the children were like, okay, 40 seconds of the disclaimer at the beginning makes me kind of want to hang up. And, of course, that's a legal thing, but, that was the feedback. And then what came out was they realized that children between 8 and 12 almost don't have access to a public phone anymore. There's no phone in the household. There's no phone at school. There's no phone on the street. So if you're going to report something, how do you report it? Where is the phone that you use to call someone? You can't use your parents' phone. So, because possibly, the situation, but something as simple as that, it's like, well, we've got a helpline for kids, but kids don't have anywhere to call us. It's like,
I would
wow,
never
right?
have thought about that. How would you know? And to put yourself in an 8-year-old shoes, how do you, as a 40-odd-year-old woman? You really do not know. So that's really fascinating.
So I think in terms of diversity, having so many different people at the table that we're just not talking about, not bringing into the conversation can only make it better.
Absolutely. And what does that agenda look like at STEMfest to encourage some of those conversations and also to gain some of those insights more broadly?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. I'm so excited. To me, STEMfest is my way of almost creating my ideal conference. So all of my favorite people in the room that I want to hear from. And I figure if I want to hear from them, surely other people do as well. But I mean, we're kicking off on day one with Dr. Sue Black, who we're bringing out from the UK. And not dissimilar to our earlier conversation, Sue Black had worked on saving Bletchley Park. So Bletchley Park was a place in World War II in northern London where the codebreakers lived. It's just, eventually stopped the war. 80% of them were women. And most people, there were 10,000 people there. 8,000 women in tech worked in this space. Incredible. And they saved millions of lives by the technology that they decrypted. And we don't hear about these stories. And so she ran a campaign to save this whole rundown place. And there was a whole book about it. Stephen Fry was like tweeting her. She's incredible. She also runs a program retraining women into tech called Tech Mums. So how do we get women later in life to come back into the industry? And we desperately need all of them. So that's kicking off on day one, which I think is pretty awesome. We've got Dr. Jordan Ewan at the end of day 2, and Jordan, mind blowing, is the nicest guy ever. So what Jordan does, he helps people with cerebral palsy, particularly, control their wheelchairs with their mind. It's mind blowing.
Explain how.
He creates technology. He basically hooks up their brain to the technology and helps them to control it based on their eye movements and things. He helped a young person drive a car. I think they crashed 29 times before they actually drove it to the end, but impressive.
As we all do, to be honest, when we're learning.
Literally using your eyes.
Eye tracking, that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, I did watch a YouTube video the other day about the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas.
I was just reading about it about 10 minutes ago, actually.
They've really upped the game there with the amount of solutions for differently abled people. And I did see some things about eye tracking. So do you think that's an area that's going to grow in accessibility for people, or is it expensive to access?
Oh, I think, a lot of mainstream technologies that we use every day come from the fringes. So they're developed for a very specialist minority group, and then they become useful for everyone. So, flatbed scanners that we used back in the day, they actually came because of, trying to meet a need for people with disabilities, and they became mainstream. So that very often happens. So, so excited to have Jordan on the program. He actually helped a woman who wanted to play in a band, but she didn't have the motor skills to do it. So she liked to drum. He helped her hook up her brain to some drums, and she played some music and ended up playing on stage at the Sydney Opera House with like her favorite band, controlling it with her brain. Like it's just
Wow, that's brilliant.
awesome.
And sorry, what's Jordan's name?
Dr. Jordan Ewan. I think I saw him on my Qantas plane recently when I went to New Zealand. He's got a documentary on there. He's been on the ABC. He's truly an innovator and a trailblazer. I'm so excited to learn more about, again, how can we just think outside our traditional ways of helping people and using technology to enable people to do things that they're very capable of doing otherwise.
Brilliant. I mean, Dr. Jordan, Newton, was it?
Nguyen, 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 yes.
And Dr. Sue Black, I mean, they've got science backgrounds. Have you got anyone what are the backgrounds of the speakers from for STEMfest?
Yeah, great question, Hannah. It's such a mix. We have a clinical psychologist talking about neurodiversity. We've got someone who's an expert in AI talking about the latest technologies we have there. We've got some young people coming to talk. So we've got a real mix of people who are doing a whole range of things that, I guess, different parts of diversity. And I know first year round, we're not going to cover all the elements that, I guess we could, but I figure we have to start the conversation somewhere.
What a great start. It's incredible, the lineup that you've got for year one, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think so many people want to have this conversation. I think that's why people want to be part of this conversation. And I was partly motivated because I was at a conference last year and we were talking about the lack of women in tech, and they were the same conversations I was having 20 years ago.
I am really interested by a point that you made earlier around a group called Tech Mums. Fire and Forte is about women in their 40s going after what feels good to them. And there is this sense of an opportunity to make a fresh start. I wondered if you could share your views on transferable skills for people that have been raising children or have been in different careers or both. And if they want to move into a career in tech that some might say could have more flexibility, there could be opportunities to earn more money in this space. What transferable skills do they need, in your view, to go about doing that?
Firstly, we need you. No question, we need you. And often I have employers of tech companies, particularly men, ask me, how do I get more women into my organization? And my first response is hire mums. Mums are very capable. They're very good at doing multiple things. And yeah, that's my first advice. And those transferable skills, I don't think I don't realize the skills that I have that I can and use in different ways. So I think find a champion, find a group of people and help each other. Know that you're capable and talk to yourself like you talk to your best friend.
I think that's really good advice. You think maybe there's any option to proactively go to employers to discuss tech roles, how could someone go about finding the right position or even maybe the right work experience?
I think please do identify who aligns with your values and who would you like to maybe try to work with and approach them. I mean, honestly, what I have learned over so many years of being an entrepreneur, the least worst thing someone can say is no. To be honest, when they don't say anything is even more frustrating than just say no and I can move on. And in some ways, like you may have said, it's a bit of a numbers game. So throw it out there to as many people possible. You throw out 100, you're going to get 10 hits, right? That's kind
Yeah.
of just how it works. So, and not just saying dilute what you do, but find those that align with you and approach. And I've certainly had men say to me, "Oh, if a female on my team comes and asks for a promotion, I almost just give it regardless because they only ask me when they really, really, really think they're worthy, and they were worthy like probably 3 years before. So I immediately say yes. So that's in their head, but they don't know how to go out and approach and be proactive. So definitely ask.
Now you talked about being brave and courageous yourself over the last 10 years. And, over the last 20 years, looking at your CV, you've boldly, in my mind, formed where you've seen an opportunity and when you've seen a need, you've created that thing that doesn't exist. Maybe you could give a few examples of what those are to our audience. And then also, if you could, explain how you had the guts to go about doing that.
Yes, I need to think about the second part of that. Still learning that one every day. So I guess probably one of the things I'm most proud of is the Tech Girls Movement Foundation. We launched in 2014. So technically we have our 10-year anniversary this year of 10 years of programs. And I was, one of a few women in my own information technology degree a few decades ago. I was fortunate to have a few lecturers who were looking at the lack of women in tech as a research project back in 2000. So I came on board. I learned research skills and I also got to understand the fact that I was in the minority and why that was a problem. I guess I kind of knew it, but I didn't realize the importance of it. So starting to research, looking at girls in schools, looking at women at university, looking at industry, that pipeline. So where do we lose them? We call it a bit of a leaky pipeline. We often will get women in, but then we lose them. So if we get them, then we push them out as well. So being able to turn that into something, so turning research into practice was something I'm pretty proud of, which doesn't often happen. Research often sits over here in the upper echelons, but let's actually make it practical. So Tech Girls was about, there's two main reasons why girls opt themselves out of tech, and it's a lack of visible female role models and a lack of understanding of what technologists do. So you know what a doctor does, you know what a lawyer does, but what does a technologist do? So I created a series of books called Tech Girls Are Superheroes, and they profile real life women in tech. There's been a few editions of them. Real life women in STEM roles as superhero characters who change the world. And so they'll have a superpower and they take that and make the world a better place. And the short fiction stories, every superhero's avatar. I'm Joella. I have a jewel that I, find in outer space and I bring it back and it's a clean energy source and I, save the world. But a fun way to engage kids in storytelling, adventure, seeing yourself and role models is so important to be able to, if you can't see it, you can't be it. It's really difficult. So it's like, if I can do this, you can do this. So showing young people that, I guess just the aspirational, like I can change the world. Yes, if I'm a superhero. And it's incredible when I talk to young people, I will say to them like, can you do X technically? And they'll go, oh no, I can't do that. I say, but if you're a superhero, how would you do it? And they're like, oh, these are the 10 ways that I would do it. So there's something about having that extra strength that externally you get, whether it's a piece of jewelry, whether it's a great pair of shoes, whatever it is, to take that on board and go out and hopefully use your skills for good. And it's not about being good at everything, but finding that one thing that you're awesome at and using it to take that out to the world. So Tech Girls is very cool. We've had 14,000 girls hands-on in our program in the last 10 years. They've all done some kind of STEM entrepreneurship. It's about young people solving young people's problems, and mostly they do that through apps. So we've had thousands of apps built by girls to solve problems in their community. And the future's really bright. Young people are pretty cool. And we just need to give them something they care about, and off they go.
Congratulations on 10 years for Tech Girls Movement, and for authoring a book, and for all of those apps that have been created. That's both really encouraging to know that girls have had hands-on experience, but also the way in which you explain it is enthralling. It's exciting. It's actually, wouldn't you want to jump out of bed to solve a problem, as opposed to maybe it's regarded as sat in a boring office behind a computer? No, it's solving problems. What kind of, you mentioned problems that affect young people. Did you give them those as a case study, and what kind of problems were you giving to them to think about?
Yeah, great question, Hannah. One of the things that works most well with the program is the girls actually choose the problem they want to solve. So we don't give them a problem. And so often in school, you're told what to do. In this way, they get to choose. So, for instance, we've had young people build apps to help other young people learn about cybersecurity, for instance, or to learn Auslan, or to help with fast fashion and share clothing and save the environment. We had a great app last year called Kindness Kitchen, which if you had food that you wanted to donate, you could look on a map and you put your postcode, it would show you where you can go and donate food in the local area. So sometimes the problems are very personal around mental health, well-being, anxiety. It could be something around your school, around lost property, bosses, homework. It's sometimes broader than that, around single-use plastics, cybersecurity, a whole range of different things. And it's really interesting to see year after year the problems that change. And so pre-COVID, there were quite a lot of cyberbullying apps. And then during COVID, we had almost no cyberbullying apps. And I think the whole context changed. And so it's really interesting to check that over time. And also our girls, they have to align the problems they solve with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So it's really great for them to think more globally about what they're doing and how important it is.
There's so much in that that is interesting. The fact that you're getting a feedback loop around what young people are experiencing, and then you're also seeing the way in which young people are thinking about solving that is an interesting reflection of our times, isn't it? And also where you think, well, where can we step in? If you work in business, if you've had exposure to, let's talk about cyberbullying, for example. I've got friends with children, and many of them are saying to me at the moment, I'm getting so upset seeing how worried they are to conform, to lose weight, to wear so much makeup. I mean, also, we've all been there, but they're so concerned about that. And one of my friends said the other day, every day I say to my daughter, social media is not real. I need you to know it's not real. So there's some kind of, I'd like to think that there's maybe some combination between the wisdom of being 20 years older than a teenager, and also a teenager being able to share what these issues are. And do you think there's some more solutions that we can somehow find together?
Oh, absolutely. No question. And we talk about banning technology in schools and things like that. That's absolutely not the answer. It's how do we harness it for good? How do we use it in a responsible way? Use it to solve problems and not just be distracted by it. I think any technology has that potential. Knowing that that's what people do, how can we send positive messages? How can we use it to solve problems rather than just distracting people and taking them down a rabbit hole and makeup and things like that? So that's fine, but let's use it in a useful way that actually hopefully benefits people. I don't think we're tapping into that. We're just mindlessly using it at the moment in a lot of ways, but let's turn that around. And when you find a problem that you've realized matters to you in your community, you've got a personal interest and agency over that, that makes all the difference.
There's a nice list of examples that you've given around tech for good, around the kindness kitchen and the various solutions that you've talked about, fast fashion. So if you don't mind, I would love to include maybe some links of some of the interesting work that you've seen after this, and we can link that to this interview.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Amazing. Now, you can't avoid the second question, because on a personal point, I'm wondering if women in their 40s are watching this and we're thinking, I have actually got something that's burning inside of me that I think is really important. You had the guts to set up the Tech Girls movement 10 years ago. How did you have the guts? And then what were the first steps that you took to actually making it happen?
Yeah, and I love that you say guts, because some people might say madness. And I think there's a little bit of madness to any kind of innovation, and it does take that. And I remember being at a conference many years ago and seeing Todd Sampson, who's one of our, TV celebrities in Australia. He's a really interesting guy. And he was on stage talking about how he started Earth Hour and what made him different to everyone else and what made him brave. And he said, I literally stand up for 5 minutes longer than everyone else does. And for me, that was a game changer. It's like, I don't have to be 100 times braver than everyone else. I just have to be 5 minutes braver than everyone else. And I can probably handle 5 minutes braver. So for me, I don't have to be that much different, just a little bit different. I probably take more risks than most people just because I'm in a position where I can. But in saying that, I mean, I didn't pay myself the first 4 years running a not-for-profit, but I was teaching on the side. I made sure I had an income so I could make enough 2 days a week so I could do what I was passionate about the other 3 days a week, and sort of really built that up over time. So it took time, but I was trying to be at least a little bit strategic to have my bases covered so I could have some income, but then also have a bit of freedom to go where I wanted to go. So that in itself, I mean, it's never easy. It's a roller coaster. Some days you feel amazing, I can do anything. Other days you're like, oh, you just like knocked it out of me. How did that happen? You know, I missed out on some massive grants yesterday. I was like, been waiting for a year. Okay, let's recalibrate and see where we are now. So it's certainly not easy, but it's definitely worthwhile. And having champions around you, having good people around you is probably the best thing that I can suggest. Having great role models, having people you can call, and people that don't think like you. One of my board members, she thinks so different to me, and I love it. And every time I call her, no, she's going to go, no, no, no. How about this? It's like, I would never have thought about that. And I love that so much because that's the only way that I grow. I don't want people to all agree with me. That's not helpful at all. And probably the best bit of advice I can give is I'm a big fan of what I call the 80% rule. So as long as I get something 80% right, I'm okay with that. I have to be okay with that because otherwise I never get anything done. If I have to wait for 100%, it never happens. And you know what? That other 20% is just sitting in your own head. Other people don't realize they're not thinking that. So if you can do 80%, you're smashing it. So let a little bit go. You're never going to be perfect. Done is better than perfect, and just give it a go, right? Give it a go.
That's great advice. Thinking that it's only 5 minutes longer as well makes you just break it down, doesn't it? I only have to stand up for longer, 5 minutes longer. And at the end of the day, if within that time or in that action that I do, I make a little bit of a mistake, that is so much more than I could have done. Rather try it than die wondering, I suppose, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And what's the worst thing? If you ask a question, the worst thing they can say is no. Doesn't matter. Like if you never ask, you never get the yes.
Yeah, brilliant. It's very inspiring, I think, because so many times we can end up in a career or a situation where we're not inspired. And actually, to do something that you believe in, yes, for 20 years, you've been talking about trying to get more women and girls into tech. However, you're seeing these increments all the time. And I genuinely, optimistically, new to this space, I suppose, believe that, you're going to see more and more traction from business because STEMfest this year, especially with the introduction of AI, you mentioned that to me earlier before we started this call, everything that's happening with Web3, etc. I do wonder if you've got an exceptionally ripe audience. What's your view of that? Are you getting those kind of responses from industry or concerns maybe about AI and evolving technologies?
Oh, absolutely. I think you're right. It's perfect timing. And we have Rita Arago, who's on our day 3, and she works for CSIRO. She's running their National AI Center. She's just started that role, and I'm super excited to see, I guess, from that perspective of someone who's working in our largest science organization in Australia, what's their vision for AI in the future and how can we be utilizing it? And how do we find ways of embracing it? And I guess what a lot motivates me in the STEMfest space is around AI. And we know that there are so many AI applications out there now that have so much unconscious bias built into them. So, for instance, the world's biggest companies, they all pretty much use AI to look through CVs. So the first round of CVs comes through, the AI scans it. Usually the AI is built by, young white guys between 18 and 35, just saying that's who most software developers are. And they're looking for keywords that those guys would use. And a lot of women applying for jobs aren't using those keywords. So they just get pushed out of the whole application process in the first round because of the keywords they've used in their application. That's not okay. That is not okay. They get a 2-minute, a response immediately that says, oh, you're not suitable for this job. No one has actually looked at that. It's been, some computer code and some keywords that have made that decision. That's not a good reason for women to be kept out of that conversation and that opportunity for roles. So I've seen that for many, many years, and that's just compounding, and it seems to further marginalize groups that are already marginalized. So with what's happening now with AI, there's so much potential to even further marginalize groups that are vulnerable. So we absolutely need to jump in now and find ways to remove some of that bias.
Also begs the question that if you're working in an organization at the moment, who is looking at a technological project, ask the question who's involved in the project, maybe,
Mhm.
because you can give a different perspective. If you're a female, if you're neurodiverse, if you've got any kind of different background,
Mhm.
maybe there is something that's already happening in your workplace that could, you might not have to jump ship altogether and change jobs, but maybe there's something in the organization that you're already working in that would be worth asking about.
Absolutely. Ask the question. Ask the question. I think no one really knows what questions to ask right now, so just
Mm.
keep talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. And can we have some positives around technology?
Right.
Because I swing between, I really liked all of this is really important, but I wondered, I mean, I'm super interested in the metaverse. I know it's a lot of hype at the moment. I've attended an NFT fest, however, and found out that just honestly, the audience there was so diverse that you thought, this is different. I do think that the people interested in this could potentially build a very different form of the internet as it evolves. I wondered if you could share anything or a number of things that maybe excite you most about that space, whether it's Web3 or various technologies that you think are interesting.
Technology is it's such a democratizer. So it helps to level the playing field. It can help people who don't have the help otherwise. And just to go back to the chat GPT conversation a little bit, I saw a great example of how we can use that technology to basically create responses for legal cases. So if you've got, a traffic offense, and often that will be for someone who doesn't have legal representation, they can use the AI to actually create an argument for them, and they can use that in court to put that forward. And there's some social justice organizations out there that are using that right now. And I love that. I think to help people, again, who we're leaving behind, who don't have access, don't have the money to use a computer program to help us to create arguments to maybe save us money and whatever that might be. I love that application of technology. So it's very easy to get to doom and gloom and, big companies controlling the world and all of that. I think we kind of need to leave them aside and let's let them play their game. But innovation comes from grassroots. It comes from people having ideas, from caring about things in the world, from finding ways to put forward and make a difference. And again, just go back to the GPT conversation because I've been reading a lot about it. There was a young man who's created an app that actually now can check if your conversation has been created by an AI. So it's creating these other
Brilliant.
kinds of innovations, which I just love. Like you wouldn't have had that otherwise if you didn't have that technology to start with. So yeah, it's not about banning things. It's about finding ways to embrace the technology and fix deficits. Like I don't want to necessarily be writing a newsletter every week. If I can get an AI to write my newsletter for me, why should I not be doing that? And why should I not be using my brain and my expertise in other ways that can make more of a difference than, writing a newsletter, which is important, but not necessarily as important as other things I can be doing in the world. So definitely turning to young people for them in the education space right now and how they're going to be using this technology, I think is super exciting on how they're going to use it to amplify the awesomeness that they do and not just make us into, boring bots, which it has the potential to do that. I think it's almost the opposite. Like every technology is disruptive. Here's another one. And we turn it around and make it good for humanity in so many ways.
It's an interesting point, actually, that if it takes away some of the more laborious tasks, where can you put your magic, your motivation, your personality, your drive? Because that can't be replicated by AI. And if there's any concern around the bots will take our jobs, actually, it could be that they take the laborious bits away, but you get to do. Yeah, that's a lovely point.
Absolutely. And if you think back to like the 50s and the revolution of technology in the household and, in kitchens, particularly in laundries and things, and it basically freed up women to do other things. So they didn't have to spend so much time at home doing the chores. Well, you've got technology that will do half of that for you. You can go out and go to work and contribute to your family and feel empowered that you're making a difference and follow your passion. So technology is such an enabler and it's really easy to get bogged down in the bad stuff, but so much possibility. Let's reframe it. So much possibility.
100% agree. And you've given so many great examples that just really can remind you that it applies to all areas of life and get concerned about, recycling and the climate, but actually just maybe even just having a think about what maybe exists already, what technology exists already to help, because there might already be an app somewhere, or if not, there could be something else coming. So that's really interesting and motivating to hear.
Absolutely. And some of those apps are probably developed by some of our young people.
I was going to say, how can people get involved with Tech Girls or also STEMfest as well?
Yeah, thanks so much, Hannah. So Tech Girls, so techgirlsmovement.org, we'd love to have you. We will be launching our 2023 program on the 8th of March, International Women's Day, and we'll be calling for mentors. So we welcome all women as mentors, and we certainly open up to our wider population for judging and so on. But if you just want to be inspired and you've got 12, an hour a week for 12 weeks to meet with a young team of young people and just guide them through, you don't have to be an expert in app building. It's about being a positive role model and someone who wants to challenge some young people and work with them and help them find their potential. So we'd love to have you for that. And then STEMfest, 14th to 16th of February in Sydney at the Masonic Centre. Registrations are open. Our program's available. We're posting lots on LinkedIn and just trying to share such incredible talent on our program. Just sharing today, we've got Dr. Kirsten Ellis from Monash University. She won the Eureka Prize last year for STEM inclusion. She's teaching people, particularly young people, who have a vision impaired and people with intellectual disabilities, how to code using blocks and things. It's the coolest thing, and you would never think that people, so marginalized, could actually actively participate in building technology. But we have a place for them when we need them. And so I'm so excited we get to build blocks and put them together and learn how, even from basics, we can build technology collectively and empower everyone to be involved. We need everyone in the technology industry to create our digital futures.
And I imagine that is CEOs, HR teams. If you're hiring for roles in your business
Absolutely.
and your organization, coming along to STEMfest could open up your eyes both to the different ways in which some of your technical problems could maybe be addressed.
Absolutely. Again, it's broadening that conversation. Like who have we got at the table and what ideas might they bring that we haven't even thought about? And there are so many possibilities. We need so many different people at the table to represent all parts of society.
I'm very excited. I can't wait to share this conversation because I know that so many have got experience in different areas that could help actually in the areas that you've mentioned. So thank you for your generosity, and all of these examples that you can just pluck out is very impressive. So maybe you're already powered by AI. I don't know.
I'm the Janine bot, actually, yes. Like, well, you spotted it.
Where is the real Jenine?
Magic world, right? Yeah.
I wondered if we could just end with some words of wisdom from you. So, firstly, what advice you might give to yourself as a 20 or 30-year-old? And then, secondly, if you were to give some advice to a 40-year-old that's maybe feeling a bit stuck, they're looking to find their fire in the way that you've got this passion for your movement, what kind of wisdom or words would you share?
Yeah. Again, amazing questions, Hannah. I think the first one would be you just have to ask. Don't be scared to ask. Again, saying no is not a bad thing. Yes makes up for all the no's, and yeah, just give it. If you want something, ask for it. A little or small, give it a go. I mean, I met the Grand Duchess of Luxembourg. I literally sent an email to someone on a website, ended up getting a free trip to Europe and meeting the Grand Duchess. I gave her a cape, like a superhero cape, all of this amazing stuff, just from an email. I mean, of course, I've done the work behind it, but again, just giving it a go. Finding your champions, finding the people around you who believe in you, who can tell you how awesome you are, who you can go to on the days you're feeling down, who can push you forward and support you. It's a really lonely journey without those people. So finding those champions, men and women around you. And a champion is different to a mentor. A champion is someone who will talk about how awesome you are when you're not even in the room. And so we all need those people to be there for us and stand up for us. So I think that's really important. And what would I say to my younger self? I think something I wish I learned a really long time ago was that pretty much everyone's making it up. I always thought everyone knew what they were doing, and no one does. Everyone's making it up. And some people are just really, really good at pretending that they know what they're doing. They're really good at that. None of us do. And so I think give it a go. Have some fun with it. Treat it lightly. It's a bit of a game in a way, and play it like a game. And I know, obviously money's important and having that, foundation and So finding ways of doing that, but then hopefully treat it a little bit lightly, but find your people, find your tribe, find the people that you care about and that care about you. And how can you work collectively to do something, that's important to you. And if you care about it, if you've got the passion, that gets over a whole bunch of barriers.
Jenine, that's incredible because without a doubt, I can imagine when you're talking to people, they would say, you have got to use this talent and this passion. And then hopefully that reassured you, encouraged you, and gave you the guts that we spoke about earlier to actually go and achieve all of the things that you've achieved, of which you didn't even really get to cover this mad, amazing story about a Grand Duchess and a cloak. I mean,
Lots of them, good stories. Oh, girls in Silicon Valley for 4 years. I had like 9-year-olds pitching their apps in Silicon Valley to Google, Facebook, the big companies, and yeah, anything's possible. But just give it a go. And what's the worst that can happen? Honestly, give it a go. And if you get one yes out of 9 no's, take the yes every time.
you are such a great example of fire and forte, and thank you for those really motivating words. I look forward to seeing you virtually or in some other, hopefully in real life, at STEMfest or sometime soon. Thank you so much, Jenine.
Thanks, Hannah, and thank you to your amazing community at Fire and Forte. Thanks for having me.